On this episode of the $1 Million Mortgage Experience, Jon Maddux sits down with attorney and director of operations at FundLoans Private Fund Division, Kevin Elmore. The two speak about a highly requested topic, cannabis. The discussion covers a range of questions about lending to those in the cannabis industry, such as, will brokers have an advantage over larger banks? Current political views? Is it dangerous to even advertise this topic? And much more. Now on to the show.
Welcome to the $1 Million Mortgage Experience podcast. Listen in as CEO Jon Maddux of FundLoans reveals tips, secrets, and origination ideas to fill your pipeline with $1 million opportunities.
Welcome to the podcast. We are discussing cannabis today and finance, so it's going to be interesting. Thank you for watching. Before I forget, please like, subscribe, and share so that you can always get our notification. Hit the little bell. And definitely want to introduce my guest here, Kevin Elmore. He's an attorney. He lives in Colorado, one of the legalized states for recreational use. But you're also finance. I've known you a long time. You've been in mortgages and in finance and law for what? How many years?
26, I think it is now.
6 years. Yeah, that's a good amount of time.
It is. It's getting there. I'm getting a lot of gray hair.
Yeah, me too. So a real estate lawyer, mortgage broker for a while. You have your mortgage broker's license,
Real estate license.
and you're now running our operations for our private fund.
Correct.
Which is awesome. Thank you.
And thanks for having me.
So, what would you say is the legal or the current legal status of cannabis right now?
Well, it's still federally illegal. It's still Schedule 1.
Still?
Still,
Come on.
unfortunately, it is still illegal
Yep.
federally to possess it. It's still a controlled substance. So
that poses some issues.
it does. It poses a lot of issues. On a state-by-state basis, it depends where you're at.
Right.
It's
So
some of it's legal, some of it's not, and then it actually gets broken down even in more detail than that as to hemp versus marijuana THC content. So that's not an easy question to answer.
right.
It depends upon where you are.
Right. And what's interesting for us as a lender is we get inquiries all the time. Like, can you lend on this property? Can you lend on this person? They own, a dispensary, or they own, a grow house, or whatever it might be. Or they're an executive of a publicly traded cannabis company. And so we get these questions all the time. And what's interesting is, being that we're in this interesting time in America where it's getting legalized in states, not only for, just for medical, but recreational, to where they're still having issues putting in the banks, like putting their money in the bank. Do you have any insight on kind of where that is with, people putting money in banks now, and like certain states like having maybe credit unions or banks that are at least taking them? I know the states are taking taxes.
They are. Yeah,
Right.
They actually have safe rooms set up. Like in California, the Franchise Tax Board, I know, has one. The IRS has one, where they're secure safe rooms where these growers and dispensaries are actually bringing in literally
Just
duffel
loads.
bags of cash to pay their taxes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was California, I think last quarter took in $74 million in taxes, which you assume is predominantly cash. There are a couple institutions that are taking deposits, but they're few and far between. I think there's a total nationwide. I think there's only 35 institutions that have elected to deal with cannabis, and even not just the people that are directly involved in it, but just the related businesses as well. So that could be
Credit card companies? Or
well, credit card companies aren't
They
there yet,
can't,
but no, it could be other agricultural companies, fertilizer providers, farm equipment providers, all that stuff. Because it's still traced back to the source, which is cash, which is from an illegal enterprise, illegal business.
Right.
And those are what all the financial laws, the money laundering laws, they're all centered around tracing that money, the placement of that money into the financial system. So it's still a nightmare.
Yeah, you don't even think about that. Like I didn't even think about like to get, equipment, right? You got to qualify for a loan to get that. A lot of these guys have cash, so they're just buying stuff cash, right? But to qualify for an equipment loan or a grow house or all this stuff, they still have to go through other third parties who then could potentially get in trouble with the federal government, right? I mean, is that what you're
Right.
saying?
Well, so let's say that you had the cash to buy some equipment, and that person or that company takes that cash to deposit in the bank, well, any cash deposit over $10,000 is going to trigger a particular form that has to get filed.
Right.
And that's fine. You could do that once or twice, but eventually the bank is going to start asking, why do you have so many cash deposits? You are a tractor,
Right.
manufacturer. Where are you getting all this cash from?
Right.
And then typically, specifically large banks will just say,
Sorry, we can't
yeah,
take that money.
go somewhere else.
Yeah, because they have to fill out a form. It's just
They do.
part
They have
of
to
it.
fill out a form, and that's on kind of the IRS, the tax side of it. Anytime there's a cash deposit over 10,000, but then if they suspect that it came from illegal activity, then they have to file a suspicious activity report. Which there's actually some FinCEN that basically keeps track as a part of the Treasury Department that manages all that stuff in the money laundering. They actually have marijuana specific forms, suspicious activity reports for marijuana, and there's a level to them, and the lowest level one is, okay, we know this is coming from an illegal federal activity, which is cannabis or marijuana, but it's coming from what we know is a state sanctioned, state licensed, state registered entity. They still have to file those forms, and the feds are just kind of saying, okay, we'll just go ahead and do that.
Right.
And
It's
that's
so
that's how
interesting
some
that
of
it's
the
like
banks
it's
do it.
still illegal federally, and then these states are allowing it. It's like there's got to be so many conversations going on about, like, okay, cool, wink, wink. You're not gonna go arrest these guys, right?
Right. Well, yeah,
Just-
so that's very interesting. Right now, it's actually more of a gentleman's agreement than it is anything else. There was the Cole memorandum that was when Obama was in, where the attorney general said basically had a written policy that we're going to leave the states alone. So as long as you follow your state guidelines and you're not connected to some other criminal activity or a gang or that sort of thing, they wouldn't go after you.
Right.
That was rescinded right after Trump got in office. Jeff Sessions rescinded that memorandum.
Did that throw
and-
some waves into the?
Well, I
cannabis
think it
industry?
did. A lot of people were concerned that all of a sudden he was going to go start sending federal agents out to start busting people that were running legitimate operations, who at that point had spent tons of money getting licensed
Right.
and doing what they had to do. Then when the new attorney general came in, he basically said during confirmation hearings for his position that he would stick to that, but it's not officially back on the table. So there's still a lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
But as of right now, it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. And Trump himself has said that he's more inclined to let the states regulate that, and he's just going to stay out of it.
Right. Right.
So.
He's friends with Kanye, so
Right? Yeah.
they're.
Right.
I'm sure they're gonna try to.
Not Snoop Dogg though.
Right. Yeah.
that'd
If
be-
he was
that'd
friends
be-
with Snoop Dogg, then we
We might not be we wouldn't have anything to talk about.
So do you know any people in Colorado that run any kind of businesses like this, or?
I've come across some that run ancillary businesses.
Yeah.
They call them MRBs, marijuana related business.
Mhm.
So, on the agricultural side, the equipment rental side.
Do you see any movement towards legitimizing like the banking? I mean, I know there's a banking bill that passed, right, in the House.
There's several things that are in the process or pending. So the House, the latest one was, I think it's called the Safe Banking Act, and basically that was, and it passed the House and got referred to the Senate. And that was basically saying we're going to allow financial institutions and financial services companies handle and be involved with the marijuana business as long as they still follow whatever state rules that they're in.
Interesting.
So that would clean it up for the states where it's currently legal. States
Right.
where it's not legal, they would still have to go ahead and pass laws to
Right.
take that off their books. But
So that's it on the floor of the Senate.
it's been
or-
referred to the Senate. I'm not sure that they've even gotten around to discussing it yet.
So they don't even have like a date for the vote or anything like that. And
Not that I'm aware of. No.
and being that the Senate is mostly Republicans, you think it's going to be? Do you think it'll be passed, or do you think? What's the
Well, I don't
odds?
know. That's a good question. I think that it will, something similar to this will
Mhm.
get passed just because there's,
Well, they're creating a problem with money laundering, right? I
well,
mean,
not only, yeah, so it's multifaceted, right? So
and potential crime that could happen with people stealing
That's-
cash and
that argument tends to have the most weight, is that it's
Mhm.
creating a localized crime problem.
right.
Just like we talked about these guys going into these secure rooms to pay their taxes with duffel bags full of
Yeah, and
cash.
someone grab you before you make it to. The,
It's out there. I
Right.
mean, there's no way that, if there's no way to get it deposited into the financial system, that cash is sitting around, and opens you up to safety concerns in
Right.
in communities.
That's interesting.
So that would
Clearly they're
resolve some
making a
of
lot
that.
of money. Like the growers, the dispensaries, the medical, they're all making lots of money. I mean, hand over fist. So it's natural that they want to buy houses and they want to, they want to expand and they want to, legitimize it. They're trying to legitimize it, right? I mean, it's interesting now that it's legal in certain states that different people have gotten into the industry that would have never been in the industry, right? Like more business people that are not criminal necessarily,
Right.
right? So like you're just your person that's a farmer, or maybe you say, okay, I can start growing marijuana instead of corn or whatever, right? Like, have you seen some of that where like some crops were shifted to marijuana that used to be tobacco crops? Or I mean, have you heard about?
Well, I have heard, and I don't know any personal stories like
Right.
that, but I have heard and have been contacted by some clients and referred people who were looking to buy, farmland in Colorado to grow, well, actually to grow hemp, which now
Mhm.
is completely legalized.
It is.
It is. It was taken
Yeah.
off. It was taken out of the substance.
Even just hemp, which has no THC, right?
Right, right. That's another tricky area too, though, because it doesn't have, but it can have, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's just the plant that hasn't been
It looks
fertilized.
exactly the same,
Yeah,
right?
pretty
Just,
much.
yeah, it's interesting.
So I know that there are some people who are trying to get into that, but there's still some financial institutions that are leery to go down that road as well
Right.
because of the potential,
Right.
sourcing
So
it.
what would be like, let's look at worst case, best case. Not that we're all, fans of this, but just I'm sure that some of our viewers would like to know because of course with all this money, it creates, like I said, an incentive to buy homes and just a local economic booms and things like that. Are there like what's worst case, what's best case as far as like legislation and law? Worst case it gets completely reversed. Say Trump gets reelected or someone else gets elected, and they're like, "Screw this! This is a drug. This is ruining our teens, whatever." And then on the other side, completely legalized in federal level. Like, walk us through like best case, worst case scenario on those two fronts.
Well, I don't think they're ever going to be able to unwind what the states have already done. The
Right.
momentum is there; it's already happening. It's recreationally legal in 10 states plus DC.
Right.
33 states now. It's it's either medicinally legal or it's
Right.
been somewhat decriminalized, meaning that the punishments are less. So I don't think they're ever going to be able to walk back from where
Right.
they are right now. On the other hand, I don't think that there's going to be, even depending on what happens with the next presidential election, I don't think it's going to be an automatic sweeping here. We're just going to sign off. It's going to come off. It's not going to be, Schedule 1 drug anymore. I think it's going to be incremental, which
Mhm.
is already what we're starting to see.
Yeah, like a continuance of that.
Just slowly, I think actually that's probably better because just like these states went ahead and approved it recreationally and medicinally, some of what the structure they put in place obviously isn't working.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's the financial issue, getting the money into the system. There wasn't a whole lot of thought to that. I think they just saw tax dollars, which in California actually kind of backfired.
How
But
so?
so because of how much it's taxed, there's 3 different taxes on
Mhm.
it. California: there's sales tax, excise tax, and there's actually a cultivation tax. So it's really expensive.
Wow.
So
So
they
people
really
still want to
didn't.
buy from Mexico? Or
Well, that's exactly it. So the estimate is that in 5 years, the illegal market, the black market, is still going to be over 50% of the market in California
just because it's taxed too much.
because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So because of that, they just didn't see the tax revenue that they thought they were going to see.
Yeah, 70 million is not a ton of money.
No,
I
I think they predicted.
I'd love to have 70 million bucks.
Well, I know, but I think the original
that could spend that in a month.
the original prediction I think was 800 million a year.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's a
so
big-
75 million a quarter does not equal just under $1 billion.
Right.
And they're actually, but by population, they're one of the worst states for tax revenue compared to the others that have legalized
Probably
it.
Oregon and Washington.
Colorado. Yeah, and they tax them differently actually. Like California taxes it on weight,
Really? How does Colorado?
or vice versa. No, yeah, it's California taxes it on weight, and Colorado just taxes it on the cost,
like the
right?
sales tax,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So it's a
Interesting.
percentage of the sale. So it tends to make it, when the prices fluctuate, it tends to be more sustainable and when
Right.
it's taxed differently.
And I think it's like from what I've seen and heard, it's getting more regulated. Also, not just only like from a standpoint, the regulation of like what each strain is, and I think big companies are getting into it, right? Like bigger companies are stepping in. It's not just local growers anymore. It's more of a probably there's just people that see huge opportunity in it, right? I mean,
Well, actually, it has to be kind of the bigger players, anyways,
right,
because it's a industry because of it's so heavily regulated
right,
and highly taxed that it's all about quantity. I mean, you have
hmm
to have volume. You can't really be, a small farmer and
right,
do it and do all the things that you need to with keeping your license, being in compliance, and all the testing that has to be done. I mean, some of these states have just a litany of things that you can and can't have, and
Hmm.
your product has to be tested, and which is what they had to do because it's still not on the federal side. There's
right,
no FDA, right? That's
right,
governing because you're eating it, you're smoking it. So there's no oversight of that. So the states had to step in and do that. Some of them are overly burdensome. You have to have, lab equipment or a lab that you can go to that costs, is
right.
expensive. So it's actually becoming, it's an industry where those with the money are easily are
Jumping
better
in,
suited for it
right,
than your mom and pop. And again,
right.
that's why the black market is still going to be viable
True, true.
because of just of the cost.
Yeah, there's still lots going on there. I mean, especially with the whole thing that just happened with down in Mexico with what was his name? Son. Did you hear about that?
Oh,
The
El Chapo's
Chapo.
son
Yeah.
got released. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's another statistic though, is that the drugs coming across the border is no longer weed. It's no
No,
longer marijuana.
just heroin
It's all the other stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of a good thing.
Right.
At least
Because
they
they're
stopped
probably
one
like,
thing.
well, this stuff's legal now, so we deal in illegal substances and
Right.
right.
Right. And if it's something that you have, made a lifestyle choice to do, why wouldn't you pay a little more to make sure that it at least has some
Quality.
regulation? Yeah, because the state says, here's what you can use and here's what can be in it. Here's the
Right.
solvents that you can use to, extract the THC. Here's the ones you can't. As opposed to if it was black market, I mean, who knows what they did? There's pesticides in it. There's
Right.
all kinds of
There
stuff.
might be that crazy fentanyl in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's sure. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I heard recently someone was telling me that even in little small communities like Carlsbad here, there are people dying of smoking weed with fentanyl in it. So black market is crazy. Yeah, it's
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
yeah. I mean, just the fact that's entering in. Another reason why you'd want to just go to, if you're into that, go to a local your local store, right, and just buy it legally.
Yeah, at least as long as they're licensed and have everything in place and they're following the rules, there's some assumption that it's better for you.
Right. Let's talk about the difference between like not hemp but CBD and like, because I know there's companies now that you can go to, you go to like what CVS, and there's CBD oil you can put on your pain, aches and pains. You can buy that. You can for pets you can use. I mean, I think for pets it's fully legalized federally. I think, is it like CBD?
It might be.
Might be, yeah. But is that so? Is CBD, is that completely legal now? Do you know? Or
Well, I think that's another area that there's not a straight answer to it.
mm-hmm.
When they removed hemp from the list, it's as long as it has less than 0.3% THC,
Then it's federally legal.
then it's federally legal. And so CBD typically doesn't have THC in it, or it
Right.
has less than that. And I'm not a scientist. This is just from
Sure.
materials I read. But the testing on that, because again, it's not something that the FDA has stepped in on. It's
Mhm.
similar to like nutritional supplements,
Mhm.
right? Where you have to have a disclaimer where, this isn't being used to cure any disease or,
Right.
anything
The
like that.
FDA disclaimer. Yeah.
Right.
So
So there's not a whole lot of oversight over that stuff. So again, it's one of those things where it could not have
right.
any THC. It could have some. I know there's a company, I think they're in Connecticut, that actually goes out and buys some of that because they're a CBD manufacturer and tests
Mhm.
it just randomly. And they said that it's varied by whether it really is CBD that's legal or CBD that's not. And as far as the legality, that some states say it's okay to possess CBD but not buy it. it's okay to
The ones that
not
haven't
sell it. I mean, it's
legalized,
all over
yeah.
the place. I mean,
Right.
it's just there's no real standard anywhere
And
about any of
it,
that stuff.
each year you're seeing more states adopt it, right? Like,
Right.
what's it now? What's the total states? I think 33 you said or something? Or?
It's 10 plus DC that's recreationally legal, plus obviously medical, and then 33 states medically
Medically.
of some form. Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, it's getting there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
43, right?
That's a lot of
Yeah.
states, yeah. Who's
But
the holdout states like?
I think if I recall looking
Tennessee, I
at a map,
think.
it's somewhat right kind of in the middle of the country.
Mhm.
Pretty much all the
Bible
all
Belt.
the West Coast states, it's legal recreationally and medicinally.
Right.
Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada,
Right.
and then obviously Colorado.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much party lines, right?
Right.
And how people vote,
Yeah, it's so true.
It's the East Coast and the West Coast.
That's funny.
Um,
Talk to us about private money and lending to people who are growers, or is that happening? I know that you go to the Scotsman Guide and you can see, people advertising, or you just Google, right? Like cannabis real estate finance. I just Googled it, and we lend to green businesses, right? Like we've got all kinds of people out there, at least marketing to it. Do you think there's danger in marketing to the cannabis, like to financing cannabis? Is that someone's going to have a target on their back? They're marketing towards that.
well, I'm not sure if they necessarily have a target on their back. I mean,
Mhm.
like we talked about earlier, obviously there's still that risk, right? Because it's
Right.
it's still federal crime. I think if they stick to it on the private money side, let's assume that it really truly is private money, and
Right. Like state localized
it's
private money.
it's in the same state. They're not raising money from out of state. Everything is localized, and it's their own money.
Right.
So to make it simple, it'd just be like me loaning you money.
Sure.
Not going outside the state. I've checked to make sure that you're licensed and you have all your permits, and as far as I know, you're in compliance with all the state laws. The risk there is fairly minimal,
Low.
and you
Yeah.
don't have to worry about other financial institutions because it's just me loaning you money.
Right. Now, what if, say, that was the case? Say, like, I was a grower or something, and you were the private lender. You lent me the money, and then all of a sudden, let's say I paid off the loan just because I had so much cash with, new crop or whatever. Paid it off. Now you got a bunch of money in cash to pay your loan off. How would you deal with that as a private lender?
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of where the chain stops. What would I do with $500,000 in cash?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have a hard time explaining it to a bank.
Right.
And that's where some of the way, like we talked about earlier, how they didn't really think through all this stuff.
Right.
That encourages breaking other laws, because it's real simple for somebody to parse that money out and deposit a little bit here, a little bit there, to not necessarily be honest about where it came from, all of which are textbook examples of money laundering,
Right.
Of bank fraud.
Why couldn't they just come to the IRS or to the state and say, here's all the money I made. You take your percentage and then
Write me a check
Yeah,
back.
right.
That's a clever idea. I don't know if anybody's tried that. You could say, hey, instead of me paying, I'm going to overpay.
Yeah.
That actually, I wonder if somebody tried that. Walk in with all the money and say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm overpaying my taxes.
Right. Can you
Here's
please
$1 million.
give me-
I'll wait for my refund check.
Yeah, that would be the best way, right?
There you go. And then
We might have
then
just
it's
solved the problem.
State sanction. You could even get the IRS to cut you a check back.
Right.
I don't know. That's clever. I
that's
don't
what
know
I'd
if they
do.
would go for that, but
Yeah, they might be like scratching their heads, like, "Are we now the money launderers?"
exactly.
The IRS and the state. So we talked about the bill passing in the House, which is definitely, a pretty good step forward for this. As far as now, if it passed the Senate, how would that affect the mortgage industry, or how would that affect banking and lending to? Like, do you think all these like Chase would jump into lending money to cannabis growers and all that?
I don't see why they wouldn't, because basically it takes out that element of,
Right.
it removes all penalties and sanctions against a financial institution that does business with now still everything still has to be state approved,
Right.
and
Licensed and everything.
registered, whatever their process is for you to be legal in that state, all that still has to be followed. So the compliance part of it is going to be a little bit burdensome
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to have to double check that. There are some registries and stuff where you can easily check those things, but at any time if that license gets revoked
Sure.
and you're lending to them, then technically you're
It's like a
not
liquor
under that.
license
Yeah,
at that point.
they call it. It's actually a safe harbor law. So as long as you follow these things, then you're not
Mhm.
going to get in trouble. So there wouldn't be any reason why financial institutions wouldn't do that.
But do you think, how like, you know, it's so common that, you know, big companies and corporations know when laws are about to get passed and then they jump in and take advantage of that. Do you think there'll be a window maybe like if the federal government passes this, a window for mortgage brokers to jump in and start lending? Maybe there'll be some lenders like maybe we could start at that point once it's federally approved, start lending to where mortgage brokers have an advantage over banks because banks are a little slower. Do you think the banks will get kind of wind of this happening and then they'll just jump in right away? Or
I think so. I think that non-bank lenders obviously have a head start, anyways,
Right.
over depository institutions, just because of how we're regulated or not regulated.
right,
So I think it'll be easier for mortgage brokers, for wholesale lenders, for them to get on that.
to jump in it, maybe have a year head start
think
or something
so.
like that.
I
Yeah,
think so.
that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
So, we compliance told us we're not supposed to say no. We have seen deals where they come in and it's a publicly traded company, like a big company that maybe they're in Canada, right? And they're publicly traded because I think in Canada isn't it legal?
It is, yes.
And banking, can they use banking in Canada too, or?
Yeah, they can because it's completely legal. Yeah,
So that makes
they've
sense that
legalized it 100%.
companies would just go to Canada and have their banking there. But how do they transport money over?
Well, see, that's that's
You can't
the
take
other
money.
problem because it's not legal here. So then our banks would have problems with that.
I wonder if you could Western Union it to Canada. That's probably what they do, right? I mean,
I
Well,
don't know.
can't-
But you should consult with an attorney privately.
not that I
and
need to
ask
do
those
this. I'm just
questions.
thinking, like, how do they do it? Like, how do people do that, right? It's like, so we've had deals where they've come in. It's a publicly traded company. We've been able to lend to an executive, or so, because they get W-2s or they get paid, legally,
Right.
and they have the ability to, to do it. So we've been able to lend to that type of borrower, and then we've seen deals. I think obviously we can't lend to borrowers that are growing. Also, I've heard there's title companies now, even in commercial lending, that won't insure, like national title companies that won't insure, the position on the title. If there's even tenants that are in place on a building, that are dispensary, even if it's medical or whatever. Do you know anything about that, like title, how that affects title? Because maybe a private lender might say, yeah, I don't have a problem giving Joe Grower here $1 million for his building, but and know that there's some leases in place, which of course they're higher leases, no
Right.
pun intended, but they're high leases that are getting paid a lot. They're getting paid more than market rent for their places, but title companies won't insure that particular. That's what I've heard. Is that
That's my understanding as well. They don't like to. I think it all started with Fidelity came out and made a statement that they wouldn't insure any. They'll give informational reports, preliminary reports, but they will not issue title policies
right?
on that. And most of the bigger title companies followed suit after that
Yeah.
and said we're not going to. I know that there is one or two here and there that will insure it. They're probably smaller companies and they think that the risk is worth it. And they might more than likely are more local or regional
state-owned
title
companies.
companies as opposed to the big national ones. And
Interesting.
going back to your point about loaning to an employee, there's actually the Fannie Mae Home Ready.
Mm-hmm.
They actually will loan. You can qualify cannabis workers that are W-2 that do have less than a 25% ownership interest in any cannabis or cannabis related
Okay.
thing. So it probably doesn't come on your radar much because that's a lower income, moderate income program.
Right.
And then in the current Department of Defense budget that's up to get approved, the House, I think it has already passed it, and it's also gone to the Senate. They threw in a little rider in there that said basically would make the VA loans be able to be made to VA to veterans that are in the cannabis industry. Again, VA, you can't be self-employed, right? That's all W-2 stuff. So they'd have to be W-2 wage earner, 2 years history. I mean, all the other
Right.
guidelines.
Right.
But if they worked in the industry, if that passes, then VA loans may be one of the first
Hmm.
federally, you know.
But isn't
ones.
it? Can't you do a VA loan if you're self-employed and you have tax returns? Right.
Oh, can you? I'm not a VA expert.
Right.
don't
I
know.
think as long as you have 2 years tax returns, you can
Okay.
be
So
self-employed.
there would still be that exception that you can't be an owner of a
More than
cannabis thing.
25%.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Same as Fannie Mae.
So that's making progress in lending.
It is, and I think
to-
it's going to continue to be incremental. I think
Right.
they're going to slowly, and I think that's probably the best approach too, because they just don't. It's kind of a strange set of circumstances how every state's passing different stuff. So I think it's going to have to be incremental to figure out how to go forward and make sure
Right.
that all the pieces fit.
So in all this kind of stuff, there's opportunity everywhere, right? So whenever there's people that aren't, or laws that are kind of in the middle of changing, there's always going to be opportunity. So I think, it's certainly something to keep your finger on the pulse with, and just try to, right? Like for mortgage brokers, they should probably stay up on this, because there's probably a big opportunity at some point, whether it be with VA loans or maybe, with, if the VA loans are able to do it, why wouldn't maybe, certain private equity funds that are buying our loans, or, REITs, or, bulk buyers be okay with, say, someone also that's 25%, right? I mean, that could happen, anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
it's not
so-
just. I mean, it's the whole everywhere. There's opportunity, right? I mean, there's opportunity for compliance officers.
Right.
Because you still have to trace all that money back because there's still an illegal component
Right.
side to it.
So like I'm thinking like a bank statement loan, right? Like if someone someone was making like $8,000 deposits into their bank in cash, I don't know how we would look at that, but I just think that because you have to source it, I know you're not probably an expert on bank statement loans, but just probably some kind of, I'm sure we've seen a deal like that. I don't recall.
yeah, I'm not
it,
sure that you'd know that the 8,000 was cash because it's just going to show up on a bank statement as a teller deposit.
Yeah.
Right. 8,000.
but- right. So yeah,
Um,
and
You know, if they did $500 a day or
mhm.
multiple deposits, I think that would probably raise some red flags. But I think if there's just one or two deposits a month of a set amount, I don't think you'd even know that it was cash.
Right.
Which also is part of the problem, right? Because if you have to have the burden of needing to know where funds came from,
Right.
then how do you track that?
Yeah, that's so interesting. This is
Yeah.
This is definitely something that I know is a hot topic. People have asked us to do podcasts on this because it's so in the gray. It's it's something that's not a lot of clarity on, and I know that we see scenarios with this stuff a lot. So it's something that's growing. There's a lot of people interested in it, and as it gets more legal, in different states like Colorado. I mean, I'm sure have you seen any potential deals where someone's like, "Hey, I've got this. I want to get a mortgage." Like,
I have, yeah, actually, and couldn't do it. This was about 4 years ago. So
Mhm.
it was even before it's gotten more
where
mainstream.
it was more medical, right? Approved.
It was. Well, so then it might have been right after it became approved recreationally.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't possible to do
Yeah.
it. There were just too many roadblocks.
That's tough.
So
What else? What other information can we give our viewers about this topic?
well, like you said, it's definitely an area of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of our viewers are entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, don't just limit yourself to paying attention to it on the brokerage side, on the loan side, because like we've talked about, there's these laws continue to get passed, there's a need for all these other services,
Sure.
like I mentioned before, compliance,
Mm-hmm.
licensing, consulting, all that stuff. I
Right.
mean, because it's basically, it's a new business. It wasn't legal before. Now it is.
Mm-hmm.
People are sorting out how to get, to where we're going to be.
Right.
And in between there's going to be a lot of growth, a lot of, new industries,
yeah.
basically, that are gonna
How
pop up.
similar is this to the prohibition when that changed? Can we learn from history?
I don't know. I can't say because I wasn't around back then, but
I mean, with all those grays, you were close. Maybe
I
you were
know,
a child.
I know. Right. My grandpa, maybe if he was around, we could ask him.
Yeah.
Um,
There's some cool movies you can watch.
I
about
mean,
it.
the difference. What I can say is the difference back then was it was legal first, right?
Yeah,
So
it was-
so they'd already had an opportunity to see what it was, know how to legislate it, know how to tax it, know how to control. control
Then
it.
they
And
shut
then they
it
just
down.
one day they just said no more.
Right.
And so then when they went back, they just when it became legal again, it was just like, well, we've already been here.
Right.
The problem with marijuana is it wasn't legal,
Right.
and now we're trying to figure out how to do it. And also scientifically, there's two components to it, right? There's the
Yeah.
psychoactive component, which obviously is the part that needs to be controlled, I think,
Right.
or should be controlled, and then the non-psychoactive, and sometimes those aren't as easy to keep separated, right? Because it's
Yeah.
it's an oddball in nature that it's a plant that can
Can fuck you up.
it can right, it can either
You
be
take too
bad
many
or not
brownies,
bad,
you
and
may not recover.
a whole crop can be non-THC, and then you
Right.
get a strong wind, and next thing you know, everything's pollinated, and it becomes a totally different
Right.
product. So
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting documentaries out there, and I think people that are really passionate about it because they say it's medicine, right? I mean, and for a lot of people, it helps a lot of things, and I think they're finding more and more that it can help with cancer, it can help with different ailments, right? Anxiety. I mean, I'm sure anxiety is probably not one of them. Most people that get paranoid or whatever, right? But being that there are a lot of good things about it, that I think that's driving a lot of the push, right? And it's some people argue it's way better for you than alcohol, in some, obviously moderation. And so I don't think, like you said, it's not going away. It's just going to continue to get bigger as far as an industry goes, and something that we should watch out for as people in finance. We if you did your continuing education, in anti-money laundering stuff, that you have to look out for this stuff and report money laundering and things like that. But there's certainly people starting to dabble in this and do pretty well, financially. So, have you heard about the new new marijuana 1 to 3 Act?
Mm-mm.
It says new marijuana 1 to 3 Act would reclassify cannabis under federal law.
Well, so basically, there's 3 routes that they're taking. One is let the states figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
The second is declassify it completely as a Schedule 1 drug, which is that.
Talk up closer.
Oh, you want to get that?
There you
Okay.
go.
So basically, there's 3 approaches to it.
Right.
The first is just completely remove it off from being a Schedule 1.
Right. Why wouldn't they just do that? Do you know?
Well, I think there's some hesitation because what's happened is it's been so long that it's been illegal that they really don't know that they haven't been able to do long-term studies on it.
Well, it's been around forever.
It has been around forever, but because it's federally illegal, research institutions can't touch it unless there's certain exceptions and exemptions that they're given.
Right.
They just can't. They can't do social experiments about it. They can't because they're funded by the federal government. It's illegal.
They can't set up placebo and blind studies.
No, right.
Okay, you smoke 4 joints a day. You
Right.
smoke 3. You smoke 2. You smoke none. Yeah.
So there has been some research around as a cancer drug, but again, that's kind of the exception, not the rule. So there's the whole scientific community hasn't had an opportunity to actually study it from a addictive standpoint, and that they'd like to. Some have, and obviously some of it's obvious. But
Wasn't there a huge push from the government at one point? Maybe it was during Reagan era, that was like, say no to drugs, and pot is the devil, and it just
this is your brain on drugs.
Yeah.
The whole egg. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a huge government push against any kind of marijuana.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I don't know if that was there's you could probably go and look at all kinds of reasons, but I mean, maybe the I don't know. There's probably a ton of different reasons why. I mean, maybe it had to do with pharmaceutical industry. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but the fact that it's now becoming legal in all these states, and then do you know what about Trump's stance? Do you know? I mean, or even just some of the Democratic hopefuls.
Well, so Trump, he's made statements that he's okay with it for
Tweets?
medical purposes. Yeah. I don't know if he has an official stance on it. I don't think there's any policy statement on it anywhere that you
Right.
find. But he's made statements that he thinks that it's okay for medical purposes. But he's also made statements that, recreational use of it is, not acceptable and
Right.
for losers, and who knows what kind of
Right,
rhetoric he uses
I
for
can
that.
hear loses.
The interesting thing though is that assuming that he stays in office. 'Cause, I mean, anything can happen with this guy, honestly.
Well, yeah, once he has
could do
nothing to
anything.
lose.
Anything could, right? So who knows? But I think that what will happen in the next 8 months, 8 months to 10 months.
You think
is-
he'll
is
make a
really
more of
gonna-
a stance on it?
I do, and I think what he'll say is, I think that he will agree with the majority that to legalize it,
Right.
because that's what's popular.
Right.
They've done polls, and it's well over 50%. I think we're above 60% now.
Right.
That people think that they should legalize marijuana.
Plus,
and
all
and
of his fans are deplorables anyway. So
Right,
they're all probably
yeah.
stoned. No.
yeah.
Just kidding.
So he'll say or whatever is
Popular to help him get more
to-
votes, yeah.
to make an argument to fit in line. So I imagine that eventually he'll say, yeah, let's legalize it.
Right. What about the
As far as the
Democrats?
Democrats that I know of, everybody except Biden is for legalization.
Okay.
Biden has, I don't think he has a policy statement about it, but it's somewhat loose. And his position is more along the let's lower the penalties for it,
Yeah.
not the let's make it completely legal. But people forget he's been in politics for,
Ever.
He'd be one to ask about prohibition because he was probably around. But
I
he
think
was
you're right.
he was kind of right in there with, you talked about the drug
Mhm.
war, the drug czar. I mean,
Mhm.
that was kind of he was on that bandwagon.
Right.
So I think that's why he's careful about what he says, because that's going to be a contradiction if
Right.
he says let's legalize it, and everybody can go back and point to it. So
You
I don't
were
think
stopping it and throwing people in jail.
yeah,
Yeah, because that has changed. Like the whole, they've lowered the penalty, right? So the people
Correct.
that are in jail right now because of marijuana
they're
possession,
getting sentences commuted, and
are they
lower
getting
sentences now.
released too? Right.
I think some are getting released,
Yeah.
and some of them, yeah. I mean, it's it was jamming up the penal system for a long
sure.
time with low level
And
crime.
most people that are stoned are not out committing crimes. They're just on their couch eating Cheetos.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Like
They're not ambitious people typically.
they're not like the guy that was on PCP killing people with knives, like
Right.
6 months ago or whatever.
Oh yeah, right.
That was crazy. But so if Trump's going to do what's popular and probably
Well, he'll say what is popular. Whether he actually does it or
Does
not
it,
is another
yeah.
thing.
That's
But
true.
I mean, that assumes he has to get reelected.
Yeah, and once that's the thing that I'm interested. Total side note here, but if Trump gets reelected, which it looks like he will, what's to stop him from doing anything, right? I mean, he doesn't have any reason to. Then you'll see the real Trump probably, because he has no reason to like get reelected. You know what I mean? Doesn't need to
Right.
be-
He'll be completely unfettered and just be like, hey, well, now it's
Yeah.
I really am as big as I think I am.
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's gonna be
It's an
interesting, and I think there's a
political
lot of-
landscape for sure.
There's a lot of uncertainty right now.
There
So
is.
much uncertainty.
There is.
I was just listening to the radio about that today and about how, investors are holding back money because they're just like, right now we have no clue what's going to happen, and that is what scares people. I think is will Trump get reelected and then be even crazier, or will another even way crazier left wing, completely left, like socialist, get elected, and then what would happen to our country then on a financial level, and so there's just so much up in the air right now. This is a crazy time.
Right. And that's why the mortgage industry is somewhat averse to jumping in with both feet, because
Yeah.
again, Trump could get his attorney general wound up and decide to go after everybody. You never know.
Right.
And then everybody in the chain goes down.
Right.
It's
right.
not just the grower.
Right.
It's not just the dispensary. It's everybody involved. It's all the assets that they've accumulated. It's the bank accounts. It's who lent them money. It's
Yeah.
it's widespread. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think we should keep our finger on the pulse on this and see where it goes. And in our private division, are we seeing any cannabis potential deals? I mean, should people call us about it? Like, if they're kind of on the fence about, the deal, like maybe it's a licensed person and they're trying to buy a house and they need a private loan. Is that something we would entertain maybe?
Right now, I don't think that our investors would have the appetite for that, unfortunately.
Yep.
Or fortunately, I guess depends on what end you're on.
Right.
But like I said, incrementally, things are changing.
Right.
So it's always a potential.
Yep.
And we don't like to just tell people, don't send us a deal,
Yeah.
or don't at least call us and we can talk about it and see.
Yeah. Run it by us.
If there's some other, and even if we can't do it, we might have another outlet for
Yep.
somebody to do it. So we'd rather have you call us and ask us about it.
For sure.
And we can try to source it if we can and get the deal done. If not, we can help you find another place for it.
That's good. Cool. Anything else you want to leave with us?
I don't think so. I think that's it. I didn't know I was going to be the in-house
Cannabis expert.
but
Well, we appreciate it. I know as a lawyer, you know a lot about different things and topics, so it's always interesting to pick your brain on that. And let's talk real quick about private money.
Okay.
Just off the subject.
Sure.
But so what are you seeing as far as scenarios? What are some scenarios that you'd like to see more of? What are we doing great? What are we knocking out of the park as far as like private money goes? What type of deals?
Well, the fix and flip is big and it's growing.
What about construction?
Construction is big.
Mhm.
Ground up construction. We like to see those because they're nice deals to have.
Right.
And then the bridge side of it, there's people in transition.
Yep.
Those are actually real nice. We'd like more of the bridge deals.
And these are rates in the single digits, right? They're not.
Yes.
They're not 10,
No,
12.
this isn't like old school private money that's
Right.
12, 15, 18%. No,
Right.
we're under 10 on
And
almost everything.
2 points or less is a lender.
About 2 points. Yeah.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And anything like any deals that you want to bring up that stand out? Anything interesting, like a type of deal that we recently funded that was interesting?
Well, I mean, all of them have some interesting component to them. Some
Yeah.
of them are, operational, interesting challenges. Others are, the people that you meet are interesting.
Right.
Um,
So there's never,
it's not
there's no
never
stupid
dull.
questions.
No, there's
Call.
no stupid questions. Sometimes you're just not, you're not asking the right questions, and we can help you get there.
Right.
You know,
Especially if you have a deal you thought was like non-QM, and and it's like an investment property or something, and it just doesn't fit just right. Might as well bring it over and see if you can fix it through doing a loan for a year or something, or 6 months. Or
if it's non-owner occupied,
Yep.
that's the first question to ask. And if it's not, then generally we can find a way to do it.
and we can do multiple states, right, with that.
Multiple states,
That's good.
all but there's only a handful of states you can't because it's commercial lending.
Right.
So there's the regulatory and licensing side of that is a lot less, if any at all. A lot of states, there's absolutely nothing.
Right. So interesting how, I saw like a lot of brokers when Dodd-Frank passed, like they bailed on resi and they went straight to no NMLS. Let's just do investment property deals, stated and hard money. But you're starting to see a lot of brokers come back and get their NMLS and say, okay, there's some cool products, and I don't have to give private money out. What about because our show usually is about origination.
Okay.
How to get big jumbo loans. Are there any? You're a lawyer. Do you ever, maybe before you were here, were you referring out deals to, to people that you could, that, I mean, you've always had your license, but like, where would
Right.
be a good way for a mortgage broker to find some big jumbo loans?
Well, I think networking with other professionals.
Yep.
So attorneys is a great source,
Right.
Especially real estate attorneys, because they see a lot of stuff. They see a lot of deals that need to be broken up, which need financing. They see a
Mhm.
lot of partnerships, LLCs, where somebody's disgruntled or needs to be dissolved, or so attorneys are a great source for that.
And how do you find? I know you as an attorney, you have access to probably lists of attorneys, but like, how would someone like me or like a mortgage broker can you Google it? Or is it
Sure,
like,
absolutely. You can Google it, and just to get an idea of real estate attorneys in your area.
Google Maps? Like, where are they
Google
at?
Maps. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah,
Drive
show up,
by
knock
their
on their
office.
door. Yeah, you
Yeah.
could cold call them. Most local bar associations have sections
Mm-hmm.
and by practice area.
Okay.
So you have estate and probate attorney,
So you can
which
find
is
that
not a bad
on
one either.
online, right?
Online.
Is that what's a website that you could go to?
Well, so you can go to like the San Diego County Bar Association.
Mm-hmm.
You just Google that and go to their webpage.
Or whatever town you live in,
whatever
right?
town you live in. Use the state bar.
Mhm.
Some states have also most states, their state association also has section memberships, and so you can get a list of those and see all the attorneys that are in the real estate section, or all.
And then you
there's
Google them,
business
find out what they're
attorneys.
doing, right? You just
Sure.
you know what their area of
Yeah.
expertise is, and their phone number's going to be right there because they want people to call them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So obviously, I mean, you could do old school. You know, you could mail something to them. I mean, you could, um,
How do
Jo-
attorneys like to be approached? You don't want to be like, oh, I might have a case for you. You don't want to
Yeah,
be like bait and
right.
switching them.
right.
But like, what would be a way you could approach an attorney on how to start a referral relationship?
Well, so I mean, I think everybody hates being sold to,
Right.
right? So you don't want that call where you think that somebody's going to try to sell you something,
Yeah.
trying to sell us insurance or whatever it is. So I think the best approach is a partnership. Hey, I am a mortgage broker.
Mm-hmm.
Here's opportunities that I have.
Mhm.
For example, on the private side, it'd be like, we got bridge loans,
Yep.
construction loans. If if you have any clients that need financing,
Mm-hmm.
along those lines, I'm here. I'm happy to take you to lunch, share with you what we can do, and
Right.
and also I'd like to get to know some more about your business, so that obviously I'm interfacing with these people as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times legal questions come up. They're mostly in entities, so they have LLCs, corporations. They need legal work. Maybe
Yeah,
I
it could be
refer them to
cross
them.
referrals,
Cross
right?
referral, absolutely. Yeah.
Especially if you start getting into the more complex deals, right? Like if you're just doing a VA or a FHA or a conventional, you're not going to need it. Most likely not going to need a real estate attorney. But if you're dealing with properties that are, big jumbo properties that might have a easement issue, or you might have like some other issue with that particular property, right?
Right.
I mean, we've seen all kinds of stuff come up, like cracked slabs and just different things, that you need to, you need to consult an attorney about,
Right.
right?
Could be title issues, could
Right.
be an easement, like you said, mechanics lien.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, if it's so on our end, obviously on our side, we're all non-owner occupied. So most of those tend to be not just one person. It's usually an LLC with multiple parties to it.
Right.
So there's investors, and invariably when you have more than one person involved, something goes sideways at some point.
Right.
So that's another area where attorneys are intimately involved, because they're trying to sort out a dispute between the people that own this piece of property.
Right.
And one of the easy ways to get them out is to refinance it.
Right.
Bridge loan, 1 year, we get rid of this guy because he's being a hassle.
Mm-hmm.
We buy him out, and
Mhm.
then we either sell the property within that year or 2-year term of the bridge loan. And so obviously attorney has to get involved in that, because there's legal paperwork to get a member of an LLC out or dissolve it or whatever.
That's
needs to be
good
done.
advice. So don't try to sell them. Try to add value. Try to show them that you could refer them business or her, and just ask them, "Hey, can I buy you lunch? I got some new products you may have never heard of. Maybe you have, but check out these cool loan products you could maybe use for some of your clients." And then, what about like RESPA violations? Like, what about if someone's an attorney? Can you? Is there any way as a mortgage broker to pay an attorney for co doing loans, or is that still shy?
Well, on the residential owner occupied side, it's a little difficult. I mean, you can pay an attorney if they're actually doing something, if they're
Mhm.
actually providing a service, and it's
Right.
fair market value.
Well,
for that.
especially if they already have the client, right? And they're already charging them for something, and then they
Right.
refer them to you, and then they just added value to their client because they got them a loan.
Right.
Maybe they're consulting with them, reviewing the docs, so they can still make money that way.
Right.
But on the non-owner side, is there ways you can just charge, give them a point or something?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no restrictions on that side. So
Right.
we could pay a broker a point and the attorney a point if that's how they wanted to do it.
That's great.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
RESPA doesn't really apply.
Awesome way to get referrals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
And don't tell the attorney that.
Well, yeah, they might just refer you the deal for free, right? 'Cause
They might just go around. They'll go behind your back and
Right.
take your point or two.
Yeah, they could.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but no, it can be anybody.
Right.
You don't have to be licensed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In most cases
Right.
on that side.
Well, cool. So how do they find you if they want to refer a deal, a private money deal? How do they find
So they can get to us through the FundLoans website. There's a page on there for the private
Cool.
side, or they can always reach out to me.
Awesome.
Email me, kelmore@fundloans.com.
Great.
And we'll take care of them.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all your insight, Kevin. And this has been an awesome podcast. So
It was fun.
yeah, we'll do it
Thanks for
again
having
when we
me.
have more information on cannabis or other things with private money, and we'll revisit it.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right.
Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you guys are looking for more content like this, we have a FundLoans YouTube channel where we give away more tips, secrets, and origination ideas. You can also email us at info@fundloans.com. And if you've made it this far, I think it's safe to say you like our content. So please subscribe, share, and send us your scenarios. Let's fund loans together.